Let's talk a little bit about the critical supplements that healthy eaters might want to think about taking. You've worked with a lot of people who are eating a whole foods plant-based diet. They're not eating a lot of saturated fat or a lot of fried foods or a lot of added sugars or even a lot of sodium. But there's still some things they may benefit from incorporating. Tell us about those key things.
Right. There's not that many of them, that are important to supplement with, but we're highlighting a few of those just so people are aware. And we take more B12 than the RDI. We take a higher dose of B12 intentionally because when we're taking a supplement, you're taking it usually once a day. And when people are eating animal products, they're eating animal products multiple times a day, and the body only absorbs a little bit of a time. Just like we only absorb a little bit of a time of like iron, we only absorb a little bit of a time. But the point is that we take a relatively hefty dose of B12. That's very, very important. The second most important one we mentioned is zinc, right?
Yeah.
This is the third most important one is probably iodine. Now, you don't have to get iodine from a supplement. You can take kelp or you can get a seaweed, but you can overdose with kelp and not all seaweeds have iodine. So it makes it easy if you just have the RDI to make sure you're getting iodine when you're not salting your food, right? So iodine is probably number three. And then we have vitamin D, which is very variable on people's skin tone, how much melanin is in their skin, how much sunshine they get, how prone they are to skin cancer, how good their diet is, and how they absorb it with you. So vitamin D is important for most people to make sure they have, at least they're not deficient in it. You don't have to push them to a high level, but so vitamin
Yeah.
D.
And that's an easy blood test as well, which
Yeah,
is
that's the good point is that it's hard to test for iodine and zinc. It's easy to test for B12, iron, and vitamin D. Vitamin D is the 25-hydroxy blood test. And I don't, want people to, if they're a little bit under the normal range of 30 to 60, like if they're 28 or 29, they don't have to be worried about that. That's fine. But if they start to be below 25, they should consider supplementing a little bit more. And they can adjust that. That's not a big deal to supplement. And the B12, the test for B12 that most accurately reflects need is you can do a homocysteine, which elevates in B12 deficiency, but homocysteine can also elevate with folate deficiency. But MMA, methylmalonic acid, is the test that elevates only from B12 deficiency, or from the other cause of MMA elevation would be very rare. So if MMA starts to go up, because B12 itself in the blood is not always a good indicator of deficiency, right? And then, of course, the best test to see if you need iron supplementation. And most people should not be supplementing with iron. Even when you're pregnant, you shouldn't willy-nilly just follow the cookbook approach and take iron if your ferritin is in the good range, right? So if your ferritin is not, yes, you should. But studies have shown that giving everybody an iron supplement during pregnancy helps some people that are deficient, but it also hurts some people that weren't deficient. So you really should know where you are before you just take it for no reason. So then the ferritin blood test is the most accurate to test your iron stores. So we're not recommending that. So again, so it's folate, it's zinc, iodine, B12, vitamin D, and then it's the EPA DHA, and that omega-3 index is available on a finger stick or a blood test, which is a relatively accurate test. And now we have a meta-analysis of 17 studies put out by a very unaffiliated with industry group. No biases, no interest in no affiliation with any company of making it. 17 showing those in the highest fifth of the omega-3 index were 15 to 18% less likely to die over that 15-year study period. And then we have another study that came out after that showing about a 5-year loss of life in all-cause mortality and all-cause cancer from those with a low omega-3 index compared to in the highest fifth or highest quintile. So we have both those studies corroborating each other now, showing that it corroborates the dozen studies we show that the omega-3 index is linked to brain shrinkage or brain size with aging. And now we're showing that a low omega-3 index can increase all-cause mortality by leading to more oxidative stress and leading to more less ability of the body to clear toxins. So
Yeah.
that's also, so the overwhelming evidence right now is that we're using clinical evidence, not theoretical evidence. So theories, a lot of people will try to use theoretical evidence on mice studies, and there's all types of crazy opinions out there. But we have an overwhelming amount of clinical evidence with human subjects showing benefit for people to have an adequate omega-3 index, which does correlate with usually with their intake. But there are some individuals who have such high activity of the conversion enzymes that convert short chain ALA from flaxseed or walnuts into the longer chain EPA and DHA. There are just some individuals that have levels in their blood of omega-3 index of 7 or 8 already without supplementing that would not necessarily have to supplement. But with the studies we've done show that 84% of people on vegan diets have insufficient levels for good health and do need to supplement. And some people try to do dietary gymnastics, take a lot of flaxseed to get their levels up. But I don't recommend that. I don't recommend that you try to take huge amounts of flax seeds, because I want people to take flax seeds, but not more than 2 tablespoons a day. There's too much potential risk of cadmium or thallium. It's better to take a mixture of things, chia seeds, walnuts, different types of nuts. You get benefit from pistachio nuts. You get benefits from Brazil nuts. It's better to take a variety and not try to restrict all omega-6 intake. Boost up your omega-3 intake with either flax oil or too much flax seeds, and then try to artificially get your omega-3 index to look more favorable. It's better to eat normally, a balanced diet. Don't take too much of any one food, so you're getting a lot of food variety, and then look at your own omega-3 index and see how much you should need to supplement to keep your level in the favorable range. So not a huge amount of things you have to supplement with, we're talking here.
Yeah. Got it. Thank you. You mentioned earlier that too much omega-3s could be a problem.
Yes.
Is that theoretical, or do you actually see that with any regularity? And I'm asking partly because I'm wondering if somebody's omega index, if they're not in that 84%, if they're in the 16% who have enough, is there a risk of getting too much? That's not just theoretical, but do you actually see that with any regularity? Because should some people not take EPA or DHA, as opposed to maybe they don't need it? Is it contraindicated?
No, I'll tell you why. Well, not if you're taking my supplement.
Okay.
Because our supplement is a nutritive dose, not a pharmacologic dose. See, the cardiologists are giving huge doses of omega-3 fish oil to try to suppress triglycerides, right? They're trying to, or to thin the blood. And I might give a person a huge dose who has Crohn's disease to try to be an immunosuppressant. I'm giving a pharmacologic dose. I'm giving a medication and dose that has medicinal effect. And in those dosages, I'm willing to accept the fact that there's some risk with that high dose of fish oil, because in this case, it's better than giving them a drug to have the anti-inflammatory or blood thinning effects. You know what I mean? But in the dose that we're giving people, 250 milligrams of EPA plus DHA, the low dose we're taking, there's no possibility of harm. The possibility of harm is when you're taking high dose fish oil over 1 gram a day. So even if a person had a level that was adequate and they were taking our nutritive dose, 1 dropper full of EPA DHA in the 200 to 300 or 200 to 400 range, there'd be no risk that that low amount would cause a problem. But they wouldn't need to take it, but it wouldn't hurt them to take it. However, we do have studies on people taking high dose fish oil, and plus the fact that these oils are also rancid. So you're getting rancid oil in higher doses. It's only in the high dose that they may raise cholesterol a bit. It's only in the high dose they may thin the blood. And it's only in the high dose that they may have immunosuppressive effects to increase risk of infection. So we're talking about, you wouldn't have that occur with taking a vegan supplement in a nutritive dose. Only and you couldn't even take a vegan supplement in a pharmacologic dose because it's too expensive. Because the vegan, and especially ours, is expensive because we have to pack it in glass and make it in small quantities and make sure it's refrigerated and shipped in trucks. And so ours is more costly to make. But in any case, even the regular cheaper vegan supplements become too expensive if you try to take the amount you can get in a fish oil in a really high dose. You know what I mean? So the answer is, you'd have to be taking fish oil to have those harmful effects, and you'd have to be taking more than 1 gram of fish oil a day to have those detrimental effects, which we advise against people do it unless there's an important reason that they need to do that. Other people who have depression, we might put on a high EPA fish oil for the first year to get them out of depression and to get their brain functioning better. Because the high EPA, we're particularly using a DHA favorable for long-term nutritive use, but a high EPA supplement for pharmacologic use for depression or autoimmune disease, or for blood thinning effects.
Yeah.
So
To
they're so like different supplements, you know what I mean?